Any more secret loot? In ancient Rome, no. Gladiators were like, it was a mixture between like family house athletes and slaves. And usually slaves were just like slaves until they like won X amount of seasons and bought their freedom as per their contracts. So like they'd be like, all right, we're gonna train you to fight, and you win like 3 straight seasons, and then you're good. And then you can fight for whatever house you want. You're a free agent. I bet it's terrifying when I know things. I'm not sure, because I was seeing a thing where like they started finding promo art and documents relating to contracts between fighters and houses, and it looked like it was a very lucrative relationship between the like the athletes and their houses, like the different people running it, because they didn't want to kill their athletes. Like, one of the things they noticed from all the writing and promos is that they didn't want to kill their athletes because training people to fight in the gladiator pits was so expensive. No, I'm saying it was lucrative for the people who were training them, providing that they got the refund on their money. Like, if they just killed their athletes or sent them in to die, they weren't getting any of their money back, and they'd go bankrupt. Because they'd have to spend so much on food, training, housing, everything for the people, even the slaves. Yeah, but also I remember reading that there has been, I think because they went through all the garbage piles and stuff like that from ancient Rome, they found a good correlation between the fighters and not dying. Like, it wasn't a really bloody sport. Oh, it was. It was definitely, like, not a good thing. But, like, instead of being like, you know that old movie called Gladiator, I think it was, and Jean-Claude Van Damme was in it, and the dude was a Spartan who got, like, betrayed and then sent to fight for his life? It wasn't so much like that as it was, like, an ancient, not as moral fighting thingy. If that makes sense. Like, it was ancient, immoral athletes. Oh no, you're gonna steal from people. I think I remember that there was also proof found that the blades and the weapons were dulled. So people didn't get cut. Unless somebody really, really, really wanted to do it. Then, like, late in the Roman Empire, like, corruption and all of that, like, started getting into it. And then they started throwing lions in and feeding people the lions and stuff like that. Yeah, see, that's really strange, because I was listening to a historian talk about it on a podcast, and I think it was might have been on Radiolab, and they were talking that it was specifically, like, people think that it was this big, large blood sport with a whole bunch of swords, but that didn't, like, from a logical perspective, they said it doesn't make sense, it doesn't track, because why would those people want their athletes to die? What benefit would they get? Like, say you're a businessman, right? And you're in the businesses of people. And you're, like, let's say you're an NHL manager, right? But there's an 80% chance that your agent that you get and you put in the NHL is going to die on the first match. And you have to put $1.2 million down to train that person to get them in there, and then they can die on their first match. And then you're ruined, and then you have nothing. There's no sense behind that. There's no logical impetus to send somebody into a match and train them if they're going to die. But if they're in an arena or they're sent in to do athletic matches where things weren't, like death wasn't as prevalent, and there's a chance that, the matches would end on something like a point-based system, that would make more sense and that would track. Because then people would be more willing to put down their money on that sort of risk. Like the person explained it, like, you gotta look from the perspective of the people who were in control of everything else. They're not gonna put money down on athletes and advertising and selling things. Like, I remember this person saying that there was even dolls. They had merchandise. They had dolls, and they had like shirts and stuff like that with colors for teams. I don't know, Core. From what I listened to, I listened to on that I think it was an NPR podcast, is that they said all of that information is false. We're talking about Roman gladiators. No, not illegal arts fighting. We're talking about Roman gladiators, because I was listening to a podcast that talked specifically about how our perception of Roman gladiators is incorrect, and that it was more run like an athletic organization with dulled weapons, and they did a lot of training and a lot of fighting, and they did a lot of promoting of their athletes. Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, because the thing is, like, I don't know who to trust in that. Like this is a person who was on a podcast who said that it's over there, that there's prevalent evidence that it was an athletic organization, and that our fantasization of it, because when I was in school I was taught the same thing, like people were stabbed and like killed and all that, but it makes way more sense with evidence of things like dolls and merchandising and everything, that it wasn't so much a blood sport as it was a competition of skill, like a martial arts tournament. Well, the thing is the person was a professor as well, Timmy. Like, that... I'll look for it after the stream. I'll look... I might not be able to find that podcast because it was years. I didn't know I'd have to cite my sources in the future. But I honestly I can understand where that person is coming from with that kind of evidence, with advertising flyers, with merchandising, and with the thought of, losing money on training fighters. Yeah, see, yeah, that's the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme in it, Timmy. I remember that. They got betrayed. Yeah, that's the part I'm hung up on, Core. I mean, you might be right. Your professors might be right, and that other dude might be right. I don't have any way to know. They'd have to go and find the weapons and see if they were actually dulled. Like, not even like dulled from weapon, like if they were thick, like they were kind of like club-like swords. If there could be evidence found of that, then it would prove that it wasn't, intended to be a lethal sport. Yeah, because there is evidence that in the late Roman Empire, there was a lot of decadence, and they started doing things like lion pit ones where they just slaughtered slaves and did all that stuff. So maybe it started out as an athletic sport, and then, decadence, corruption, and horrible people being horrible, because every time you give a chance a person to be horrible, they're going to be horrible. So, like a person in power, like if you give a person in power a chance to be horrible, they're going to be horrible. That's just the way of it. Yeah, maybe they had tomatoes under their jerseys, and somebody would aim and hit the tomatoes, and the audience would be like, "Oh, he's gonna die." Very slow. Okay, sorry. Also, for everybody here watching for the gameplay, I'm sorry. That was a really fun conversation I was having with Core. I love conversations like that. Conversations where I get to flex my brain muscles for once, because they're kind of dying, and I'm losing them. Goomba Bros. Okay. But we gotta appeal too? Okay. Yep, okay, so we gotta do the conditions. Got it. Hey, security, you gonna come get me? No, it's... The point that I'm trying to make is from an economist perspective, right? Like... So this is the argument that was presented, and the one that I agree with because it makes sense, right? And it is, let us say that you have $2 million, right? And you can invest $1.2 million on an athlete. You can feed them, you can house them, you can train them, right? Now, that is just like, you throw that money down, that's guaranteed they will be trained and they will be ready to go. But you're given the caveat that there is anywhere from a 50 to an 80% chance that that athlete will die and you will get no return on your money whatsoever on their first match. Would you ever put the money down on that? Would you take that risk? That's the argument that person made, and that is the argument that I agree with. Would you do that? I wouldn't. Why would they? Like, why would they put that money down if their fighter was guaranteed to have a chance to die? There would have to be some sort of guarantee for an economist of a return on their money equal to or greater to what they're spending on the fighter in order to make them willing to put down the money to get them to that position. But I'm not saying they bought. I'm saying they had to clothe, feed, and they had to like keep their fighters happy, right? So they had to do all of that, and that was expensive back then. Like, getting a bushel of apples for us is different from getting a bushel of apples back then, you know, to keep them healthy and all that. That was all expensive, and if they have like 100 fighters, they're not going to stay rich and healthy rich and happy if they keep sending fighters in that can die. But you wouldn't get merchandise. If you send somebody into the NHL on their first game, there's no such thing as merchandising. If they can die on their first outing, you get nothing back. You get no return. You don't get merchandising, you don't get ticket seats, you don't get a percentage of their contract deal because they're dead. Right? They're gone. They're pulled out. That's why I'm saying there had to be a guarantee. Right, but you have to pay for all that. Like people think that like slaves and that generated all this freedom for the people who were rich. They still had to feed all of them. They still had to build buildings and house them and get the materials for all that stuff. Right? Like, slaves weren't a free, complete 100% currency back then in the Roman Empire. It wasn't. There was still physical costs associated with all of it. That's the part I'm talking about. There's still that cost. There's still that overhead. Slaves weren't like, you couldn't just like get a slave and be like, okay, make an apple tree, get us apples, get us oranges, get us this, get us that, get us that, get us that, and also have no, like, anything. Yeah, they were definitely lower cost than regular workers for sure. But they still needed the materials. Like, there's still costs associated with all of it. That's what I'm saying. There's always cost. And in terms of an athlete, they didn't just have some regular Joe. They trained them as athletes. But it wasn't only that either. There were houses, like, from what I heard, there were houses of people that were pooling together to build, like, they had mansions and, like, training areas, and they had tutors for their athletes. Tutors who weren't slaves to train their people, which required money. Great fighters. Like, everything, like, there was cost. That's what I'm saying. There's cost, and the idea that they went in and they could lose all of that cost, nobody would do it. Even if it was Jeff Bezos, nope, they wouldn't do it. Why would you do it? It wouldn't give you prestige to lose your dudes in the first round. I don't know. I don't think we can make that assertion, like, that it wasn't too great or that it was too great. Like, I'm saying that as an, like, from an entire economy thing, that gambling doesn't seem like it makes sense. Right? Like, it just doesn't. It doesn't track. I don't see why they would do it. Like, we would need to be able to find out everything, like how much every single thing costs. And maybe, maybe it turned out like you're right. Maybe it'll turn out I'm right. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, like, it might have been possible, it might not have been. There's enough evidence to convince me that it at the very least started as a celebration of athletics. See, that was another thing too that I was listening to, was that there were punishment games. And there's evidence that there were that sort of thing, like prisoners, executions, like public slaughters and stuff like that. Like, that was an actual thing in the Colosseum. But that was separate to the athletic sports. Like, in order to appropriately assess what was going on with the athletic side of it, you have to take out the slaughter part. Like, of prisoners and stuff like that, because that was an entirely different thing. That was a judicial thing. That was like a exertion of the Roman influence over the masses to keep people in line, and to show people that they can't do things like steal and murder and fight against the Roman Empire. Right? Like, that was an entirely different thing. Then they had the athletic side to it. Wait, what's going on here? Sorry, I got... I have a question. Is anybody still out there? Because I just got so wrapped up. Like, I literally just then, like 10 seconds after after what I said, like, I just snapped back and I was like, wait, what am I doing? How did they get a whale in there? Alright, sorry, yeah, like, that's the part that I'm hung up on. Like, I 100% agree about the horriblosities that happened with, like, that person mentioned, the execution, stuff like that. Like, I even mentioned early in the conversation about the lions and the murdering of slaves and stuff like that. Like, that did happen. But the argument that was made was that if you separate the two of them and, like, see, like, on one side is the government and on the other side is, like, the WWF, it makes more sense. Yeah, like... yeah, it's so confusing how everything happened and how it happened, why it happened, what their thought process was. So, like, a lot of people say history is stupid. Like, if I remember in school, so many people did not care at all about history class. But my God, history can be so, like, crazy interesting. Well, that is a lot of Goombas. Wait, am I gonna be able to knock them out with literally one turtle shell? I know, right? This has been my fault as well. Like, literally, the moment it started, I was just caught up in it. I had a lot of fun. Like, for example, thank you. I secretly have a lot of knowledge on a couple of subjects. Every now and again, somebody will be like, say something. I'll be like, so I know something about this. I'll see if I can find it for you. I'm hoping it was Radiolab, because Radiolab does amazing ones. Like, there was a podcast that I listened to about Vlad the Impaler, and about the different versions of history. So, like, a lot of people think that history is just 100% complete factual by what was written. But if you take the history and the writings from all the countries around Vlad the Impaler and then the country inside Vlad the Impaler, you realize that every single perspective of every single country changes the view of that person and of, like, everything around it. Like, every single one. Like, if you take all of the different retellings of history, you can find the truth somewhere in the middle. And it's like, if you go and you, like, look, say, like, to the country to the, like, west of Vlad the Impaler, it's like Vlad the Impaler was a monster, literally the impetus for Dracula. Then if you look in Vlad the Impaler's country, it's like, this person was a hero. This person saved us from being destroyed by armies that are like 15,000 times our you know, like our size. And then you look at like the one to like maybe the east, and they were like, we wanted to be allies with them, but they didn't want to be with us because they were extremely xenophobic. I agree with you 100%. I could be wrong too. I 100% like when I started this started the conversation, I went into it not saying that I'm speaking 100% factual recreational evidence of anything. I got convinced by an explanation and by kind of like a logical representation of several pieces of evidence that made sense to me. But actually, I have evidence of kind of like professorial bias, but I can't bring it up on stream. I can talk to you about it after the stream. Because this was something that somebody told me in confidence from their time that they were in university with one of the most respected professors of their school, who's respected around the world. So I can't just bring that up on stream. But if you remind me, I will tell you, because it's like I will tell you after the stream, like a little bit of it. Yeah, I just don't want to bring it up like in a big public space, you know. But yeah, like he was telling me about his thing with the university and that professor, and how you can't really like it ends up becoming human, like the line between fact and human judgment and reasoning sometimes gets blurred. Okay, Wolf, Timmy, BGP, I apologize, dudes. I'm sorry. That was so interesting for me. Like, I had so much fun for the past 30 minutes talking about that. I am so sorry that the game went on a back burner. But it was so fun. And I mean, sometimes I'm afraid that I might make myself look out to be like a big dummy. Hey, Zen. Hey, Track. Dudes, you were watching too? No, I'm so sorry. That dude just cheated. He appealed to the crowd at least once. This is a wrestling match. They're playing, what are they called? The heels? Alright, let's do the appeal real quick. Oh, by the way, Zen. Oh yeah, okay, so Zen, Track, have you folks played this game before? I don't think you have, right, Zen? Early in the game, this game lets you tackle a 100-floor dungeon, which has enemies from each of the chapters of the game. There's like 8 chapters. I managed to get to floor 80 of 100. I am so proud of myself. Oh yeah, that's some serious scanline right there. I think we won the first fight. So I am so unbelievably overpowered that this is gonna be... This is gonna be like that dude from that one manga that I've been reading recently, because somebody linked it to me. I think it's called Solo Powering. Where, like, the dude is just literally unstoppably powerful. Oh, it's so fun. Yeah, that one. if you like combat and manga anime or manga and stuff like that, it's just literally somebody so ungodly strong at every stage. The next enemy is like, haha, I am so powerful, you're gonna have to train for 10,000, and then they're dead. Or, Core, don't worry about it, dude. I had a lot of fun. What a joke. I'm gonna be the heel. I think, honestly, I think I like I Alone level up as well, because it has almost like more of a selfish tone to it. Alright, thank you for letting me know, Court, because I just noticed I have like 15 notifications. Ooh, what's my fight money? Because I'm so poor from gambling. Give money, please. Wait. Not even an inn here. No, I did appeal. I appealed and then I just used Coops, and Coops wiped them all out. Okay, let me see if there's an inn here real quick, because I'm just gonna blast through these. I am... Well, it literally... I forgot, but it literally told me when I got in the match, it's like, please appeal, please? Hey, don't forget to appeal. Or are you gonna replace Coops? Oh, you're probably gonna kill Coops and take over Coops' spot. Dude, I hope you have a higher attack stat.